planning and environment.
Exactly. On planning and environment. To actually have, and we need to again put submissions in, because he will consult with them. He doesn't have to take their word, but he will consult with them. So again, submissions need to go in again, unfortunately.
Right, thanks very much.
Might be also helpful at this point, because we're a smaller working group. You might like to identify yourself, maybe even if you're not the full name, even just your first name, and if you're a resident of Weston Creek or a stakeholder of some kind, it might help the meeting flow. It's Kirsten from Weston, by the way, and she's been extremely helpful organising meetings. So thank you, Kirsten.
My name's Aubrey Newman. I live in Weston, and I'm most concerned about the water supply. I see great plans of additional accommodations being provided. The question I asked was not answered, and to be told that the new accommodations will be 40% more efficient than others, to me is hopeless. And I am very doubtful. I've been to 3 meetings over the years about water supply, and I'm very unconvinced about the adequacy of the government's planning for water. And a simple question of how many litres per capita per day, which is a standard sort of thing any water engineer would, or any planner would know, was not given in the answer to my question. And so I wonder what wool is being pulled over our eyes. So I think as a community association, we ought to express very strong concern about the adequacy of the water supply, because I went on to ask about the normal expected water supply that will be available for this additional development. Would it be comparable to the water supply now we're restricted to under stage 1, 2, 3 or whatever? Because I wonder whether in this new system we will be able to wash our windows or wash our cars, let alone have gardens. Or are we all going to be recycling our own sewage? So I'm really concerned. I've had a lot of years of experience in civil engineering and town planning.
We might work our way through. There's a couple of questions.
Who was first here?
Well, just listening to the earlier presentation, I thought 2 points came out very strongly, for me anyway. One was, one of the main focuses of the Community Council's campaign has been the preservation of that ridge between the new suburb and the parkway. And so I'm not sure that was really answered, because I think they had allocated it as broad acre, which actually means, they could still have factories put on it. So I think the zoning of that land, which the council has identified as really probably the priority, perhaps needs to be clarified. And the other thing that came out for me was whether they've actually got the right bits of the CIT land preserved and not to be developed on. Those were the 2 things that came out for me.
I'll speak on the ridge top briefly. When we were in the last meeting with the minister, this was put quite forcefully and quite strongly to ACFA and specifically to the minister, that the people are now alerted to the fact that this ridge top is broadacre, and that does mean that it can be redeveloped. Soothing words were said about community facilities. That was rejected by your representatives at the meeting, us, and forcefully, and that went to the minister. From now on, that's really a political issue. It's not about true or false or facts or logic. It's essentially a political style.
It's kind of political in 2 parts. It's political, it's with the planning minister, and it's also under the jurisdiction of the NCA, National Capital Authority. So it's a grey area. They may not have had a lot of control over that ridge top, as it turns out anyway. So that's still something that has to be worked through. I'd like to have an excellent result called open space. It's very hard to convert that to residential. but this is where we are currently. At least it's not residential, but we need to work on it still. And the arboretum that Kirsten touched on before also has to be looked at closely as well.
On the arboretum, what steps are things? Do we now go back to state line and say, look, first, you know, they slightly report on it, putting all in with the development of the Then the minister popped up and said, we're saving it and it's entirely, you know, everything. Then he sent me an email saying...
You thought it was over then, the whole thing.
That's what Then he sends an email back and said, I'm going to save now significant plantings where appropriate. Then I see the plan here and I think, now it's a totally different message yet again. So what's happening? Like, who do we believe and what's our next step? Do we just go back to the media and say, look, we still think what they're doing is just not right? And also maybe bring the ridge into it? Or like, what do you think of it?
Well, it's up for people to talk. I've got definite opinions, but as a chair, I'm very reluctant to sort of tell people what I think. I like to hear what collectively everybody thinks. I will be actually standing down next month as chairman. I've had 2 years, and Eddie will actually be chair, and I'll be a lot more vocal on a number of issues. Eddie will be acting chair, and August we have our AGM, and Eddie's going to talk about that because it's rather exciting. There's a lot of committee member positions available, and we'll have working groups on things as well. And you can elect to work in a working group that really is your passion as well, because we've stirred up a lot of interest, and we don't want to just drop it. We want to carry it through to the end. And this lady with the mic has been very patient.
Thank you. Obviously, the Arboretum issue needs following up. That seems to be quite clear, that it's ambiguous as to what they're really planning. I don't know anything about water, that is, other than what I drink from the tap, and I try to be mindful of how much I use. But I always understood that it's a whole of ACT issue. The planning of another subdivision is just the same as the planning of the subdivision in Ford or down in Tuggeranong or wherever. There's no difference from one area to the other, I'm pretty sure of that. So I don't actually understand the question as it pertains to this area. And yes, water is an issue and we need to, you know, as a whole ACT community be concerned about that. But this, in the broad sense of water, this is another subdivision. So, yeah, your point is absolutely great and we all need to be vigilant, but I don't know that it has a specific bearing on this, you know, that it's any different for this to any other subdivision.
I guess in asking the question, I wanted to know what were the criteria for any of the expansion in Canberra, because I
think that's a question that ACTU needs to answer. That's not a question, you know, that's a bigger Canberra issue, not just a Northwestern issue.
It's a planning question.
The more the people come into our area, the more the impact on us. And that way it's relevant.
So are you referring to Northwestern as an add-on to Western, or are you referring to Molonglo as a whole?
Well, the whole plan that they had.
The whole plan, right. So that's your concern, the whole new proposal, okay.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, if the population's going to grow by 15%, then that means the amount of water that's available to the rest of the population is going to reduce by 15%. So if the dam's only at 40% capacity now, you've got another 15% of people, you know, using that water. Of course it's going to be lower. I mean, there is other regions around Australia that have said we want to be sustainable, we don't want more development. And I'm not saying that we don't need to make affordable housing available for people, but perhaps 55,000 is a little bit too much. You know, maybe we could ask them to consider reviewing that downwards slightly.
Can I just add something on, like, in the report, the 260-page preliminary assessment, if you've ever read that on the internet, they actually based Molonglo, the 76,000 people, on an estimated population growth of going from 330,000, which is now, to about 500,000 in about 25, 30 years' time. So, you know, the whole question about whether it's in Northwestern or Ford or wherever, this issue is much bigger than Northwestern. Yeah. You know, and there were lots of comments on all those 160 submissions and the 60 emails that went in originally in November. quite a few were basically saying, why are we encouraging population immigration into Canberra when we can't support our own people?
So that's my point with the facility
As well.
And
you
so
know.
that's not really, my argument, it's not the place for this forum.
Okay.